I want to talk about a kind of painting which is not theorized much at present, one that is fundamentally rather at odds with current criticism and debate. And I will argue for its validity and seek to show that it is marginalized because it poses a challenge to prevalent thinking. I will not discuss what such paintings ought to look like, nor will I show examples. I should make it clear that such painting does not borrow from photography. And in my artistic practice, I pursue this kind of painting, and I was going to show you a picture, but the technology has let us down. The picture I have to describe to you now would have been of a setup of an easel in the landscape with some paints around it, and you see the sea behind. Now, imagine that on the blank screen. What you see is a setup for painting in nature. And the kind of painting I want to discuss is precisely that. A painting where the artist engages with the world in which she finds herself, seeks to record flickers arising within that being in the world, and presents the record to an audience. I want to secure this form of practice against readily available objections by showing and challenging the framework from which those objections arise. And I will contextualize painting in nature within a philosophical framework that gives it its value. When you see this setup, most of you will have images of Impressionism flash up. This form of practice seems dated, but is it? Is it not the most cutting-edge activity within the arts? Conceptual art has taught us that art is only art in as much as it makes us ask the question, is this art? This has given us urinals, pickled sharks, empty gallery spaces, and flickering lights. We've had drug addicts and prostitutes being tattooed for money, Borland's videos of the ongoing cosmetic operation on herself, and Bill Bayola's video of his dying parent. High art, low art, any medium, any technique, no medium, no technique. What is left that really challenges us to ask, is this art? Paintings done in nature out of doors. Plein air painting is the new avant-garde. But you might object, it's nothing new. Let us assume for the moment that indeed it had been done before. Let us assume that the assertion was correct. Why is it a problem if something has been done before? Here we encounter Hegel's legacy. He was the first Western European philosopher who sought to show that a particular narrative connects the progressive historical development of all human endeavor, a development that will ultimately lead to a goal. Each human being is called upon to further that progress so that the goal might be achieved as soon as possible. Within such a system, going back in time, repetition appears as an objectionable waste of time that slows down progress for all. Hegel is relevant today as a vast number of the most influential art theorists and critics since the 1950s, irrespective of their rather considerable difference, have strong Marxist leanings. I mentioned Clement Greenberg, Rosalind Krauss, Hal Foster, Benjamin Bucklow, J.M. Bernstein in the US, this is just a few, François Lyotard, Michel Foucault, Gilles Deleuze, and then Peter Osborne in Europe. David Costello's and Jonathan Vickery's compendium Art, Key Contemporary Thinkers, published only in 2007, is interesting here as they made the political affiliations of the key thinkers explicit. In his theory of historical materialism, Marx takes from Hegel the idea of the significance of historical progress tied to a specific narrative, culminating in a wonderful goal, with everyone being responsible actively to further the speedy attainment of said goal. Materialist critics will dismiss the validity of any art form that appears to slow down the attainment of the goal by stagnating, or worse, by going back in time. So, if you dismiss a work of art or an approach to producing art simply because you've seen something like it before, you need to feel confident in the idea of progress and your ability to identify the goal in which history will culminate. By noteworthy coincidence, progress and the idea of the new are also key drivers in capitalism. New products must be invented and produced to satisfy new desires. Expansion, growth, progress, developing countries, a developing economy. all that is good. Revisiting the old is backward. Standing still is dangerous. From this perspective, as soon as a product and its means of production look like something seen before, sold before, it must be rejected and superseded by something new. We observe the demand for progress as being shared by the seemingly opposing strands of materialism, Marxism, and capitalism. The demand is made concrete on the one hand by critics validating only that art which they deem progressive, and on the other by capitalists buying or exhibiting art which they deem progressive. I, by contrast, am not convinced of an ultimate goal which we as a society or global village should serve. Instead, for reasons that will become clearer, I seek to engage with the three-dimensional world, the real world in which I find myself situated. And if I speak of me here, it is that kind of painting in nature I just stand in for that whole interest. When I'm out there, I not only see, I also hear, I smell the air, I feel the wind and the temperature. I touch the air, I touch the ground. Once I attend to the experience, the notions of an I and of a world of objects become strangely blurred. There are changes at every moment. The sun breaks through the clouds, it starts to rain. The wind picks up, the shadow has changed. The smell is different, it gets hotter, I'm getting thirsty. I concentrate not to analyze his sense of my being in the world, not to construct entities that I can label with words such as tree, cloud, grass, not to substitute the flux, the comings and goings with fixed components, but to respond as immediately as possible to the myriad of experiences and sensations, choosing and mixing a color by small sparks, guided by small sparks, flutters, putting the brush here and overpainting there. I'm in an open-ended responsiveness, undeniably underpinned by previous training in the Western European tradition, not as intention, but as the unavoidable influence of my facticity, of what I have become in the course of my life. When you stand on the ground, do you stand on it, or does the ground press against you? Who, which is active, which passive? Or is there just a standing, a grounding, which occurs between, amongst, with? If you stay with that sensation, not interpreting it by thinking, oh, these are my feet on the ground, not to dream about it, that reminds me of my recent holiday, not to follow your thoughts, I really need to buy a new pair of shoes. That is the discipline of the mind, not to wander, and if you wander, to bring yourself back to what you experience. And when you paint, not to fall in love with the picture and finish it, blocking your continuously changing experience, not to let the pressure to make things look recognizable affect your painting work, not to make it look like pictures you like and which they resemble a picture at that moment. The language I'm using may remind you of your yoga class or your meditation group, and indeed the phenomenological engagement with the world that I'm proposing is not dissimilar to the concerns underpinning certain meditation practices. Heidegger, a key thinker on phenomenology, recognizes that proximity when he says with regard to Daisetsu Suzuki, one of the great Zen teachers of the 20th century, quote, "If I understand this man correctly, this is what I have been trying to say in all my writings," unquote. This kind of painting is a phenomenological practice.